Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Is that Dolly Parton? No, Tammy Wynette, right? Tammy Wynette. Divorce. You probably heard all of those songs.
I have.
Yeah, we're talking about separating and breaking up on The Law Show from McQuarrie Hunter LLP. We have David Halkett, partner, and Leah Donaldson, associate. So thanks for being on the show. And there's 3 of you in the family law department there, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm the partner in the department. Then we have Leah, who is the senior associate. Then we have Sarah.
So you have a full-service firm. So if you had to deal with anything to do with taxation, or you can have other people you can bring into the mix, right?
Yeah, we have the full-service corporate department. If you have corporate reorgs as a part of it.
Well, some people have small businesses and things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have the estate department as well. That Leah also does estate litigation. So there's we can, and if you get a car accident, we'll deal with you there too.
Okay, good to know. All right, so when someone comes in, we talked about the initial consultation coming in, and they just want to offload on you, and you listen and you say, okay, here's where we think we should be going. So what is kind of like the little checklist you do when someone comes in? What like what do you own? How many children? What sort of stuff?
Well, we have a client information sheet that they fill out before they come in to see us. Best case scenario, they fill it out ahead of time and send it to us, but usually that doesn't happen. They fill it out when they come for their appointment. And they set out their basic information, identify themselves, who the parties are, addresses, work, basic employment income, and then any assets that are over like $1,000, we ask them to list all their assets in the end. So we have a better idea. And I've gotten to the point that when my assistant brings it into me and she takes them into the room, I'm looking at it as I'm walking in to meet with them, I should say, and I have a pretty good idea where it's going to go. And then
why is that?
Well, it's nice to focus the meeting, and also having done it this as long as I have a better idea of what is going to come out of the meeting. At least when I know what the assets are, and how many children there are, so what issues are going to be there. And then if it says my spouse isn't working, then I know spousal support's an issue. So you have the good gambit of the issues before you get in.
So Leah, what is it? The sticking points, or is it money and children, number 1 and 2, or children and money?
Both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Children, if you have children, and if you don't have children, it's money.
Right.
Yeah. Or both if you have children.
Yeah.
Especially because the child support thing can combine both issues, right? So you've got the care of children, but also who's going to pay for the costs relating to those children.
And then you have the compounding factor of the escalating real estate market that we're all living in. And so people are getting a little stickier with assets because they're worth so much money. And you have to turn around and find another place to live, which is expensive.
Exactly.
Is it making people a little more ornery? Is it?
I haven't noticed it that much. They're just the one who wants to buy the asset. It wants it done quickly.
Yeah, and lock it in at a good price.
Whereas the other person wants to let it slide for a bit. And hope
but you were telling me on a previous show that, okay, we'll pick a round number here. House is worth $500,000, but you actually pay out the amount for the house on the day that the divorce goes through. So if the house went from $500,000 to $550,000, you got to come up with another $25,000, right?
Unless there was an agreement that says I'm buying you out at this price.
At this price.
Yeah.
So if the market moves, you can get compensation if.
Yeah, if there's no agreement and you go to trial, and the trial could be a year and a half away, and the price went up, that's what the new price is.
Right. And that's when people can get stuck because they're thinking they are able to afford it at one price and the price moved.
Exactly. And when I first started 25 years ago, when you separated, they were in different houses. Now, at least in half my case, in their same house. And I don't know about you, Leah.
Yeah, because it's too expensive for that other party to move out, especially if there's children involved. So they often will live in the same household leading up to and including trial.
So when you have two people in under the same roof, what was that? War of the Roses?
Yeah, War of the Roses.
The movie. So that's a complicating factor, right? So if they can't afford to live apart when they actually don't like each other anymore, how are they going to do it when they get a divorce?
Well, at least then they would have. If they own the home, they will have sold the home, and
so they can liquefy the asset.
Exactly.
Right?
So they'll have that. But yeah, it's just because at the beginning you don't have your new house, you still have your mortgage to pay, and you may be having to pay for the children. So if you're in two different houses, it's just impossible.
So you have the checklist of this is what I own. So house, RSPs, a certain number of things. Children, 2 children, check. The dog. You have big fights over pets?
Last few agreements I've had, it's been that.
Yeah. Vet fees too, like
Yeah.
future ongoing
Yeah,
expenses.
yeah. You got to pay for Fluffy's care.
Exactly.
No, I can see that. You know, I took my dog for he was bitten by another dog. $800 later.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Exactly.
So what other kinds of things come into this? You have custody issues. We're going to go into more detail here, but what about if there's been a sort of an abusive relationship and one just wants to get away from the other? What do you counsel them on?
Well, when the new act came into effect, the Family Law Act in 2013, it specifically put family violence as a factor in determining where the children should reside. And we have to screen for family violence now. Basically
On every case?
Yeah, that's part of our obligations. Whenever there's something under the FLA, we have to screen for it. And so we have to ask if there was violence. And it's not just, we think, physical violence. That's usually the easiest one to determine. It's the emotional, verbal. There's economic violence. There's all kinds of things that, if you see the list, it's amazing how much we have to be asking about. And trying to get the information out of the clients can be tough, at least for me anyway, Leah.
Yeah, it can be, especially initially. People aren't eager to talk about that part of their relationship, but it is important to discuss at the outset.
So when you say that economic, you have the main breadwinners starving the other person of assets or accessibility to the funds, right?
Exactly. It doesn't happen as much now because in many cases both parents have their own source of income, or both parties. But if one is the only source of income, they may say you can't use that credit card. They cut up the credit cards, cancel it on them, so they have no source of funds. They may also say you can't call your friends, you can't go out without my approval, and those kind of things. So there's a lot more that we wouldn't have thought of, say, 5-10 years ago, that now factors into the ability of the party who has been dominated to be able to resolve the case and give you good instructions to resolve it.
So I find this, people have decided they don't want to be with each other any longer, but they're still staying in the house. So it's this kind of upstairs, downstairs kind of thing. Yep. One lives upstairs, the other one lives in the basement.
Separate rooms.
And I know the man is always in the basement. He always gets stuck in the basement.
No, I've had a couple of cases where the wife went down to the basement.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
A couple.
Yeah.
Come on, we know our place. So then do you have to, between the time where you say, okay, we decided we're moving on and breaking up the house, dividing it, one's downstairs, one upstairs, do you have to have some kind of written framework for how it's going to work to get you there? Like, can you do that? Like, I get to, use this part of the, like, how complicated
No, it doesn't
does
happen
it get?
too much.
No.
Usually the finances all stay the same.
Yeah.
And the children can be weird because sometimes the person in the basement will say they should be down with me this time, but they want to stay in their own rooms, and that causes a bit of a hassle. But as long as it's in the same house, a lot of the issues are kind of put off. It's just figuring out what are we going to do once we get rid of the main asset, and once that's liquefied.
I know a couple divorced, and the husband is in the basement and still there, even after the divorce. Do you have that where they kind of like rent back?
That's not too
in my
common.
Case.
No, I haven't had that happen yet. I mean, people will do it for an extended period of time. It can take up to 2 years, sometimes 3 years. If the parties don't move forward with the negotiations, it can stay like that for a long time. But I haven't had a case where parties have stayed in the same house.
So what's your biggest piece of advice when someone comes in here and says, I want to move through this process? Like, what hurdles do people put up in front of themselves? Like, they can't get out of their own way. Like, what's your advice? What are you doing wrong, like, to help you stick handle your way through this? What are the big mistakes that people make?
I think one of the big mistakes you'll make is that they're not informed about their own situation. So they might come in and say, I have no idea what assets we have. I have no idea about our bank accounts or the mortgage or how the title is registered to the home. So that can put you at a disadvantage if you're starting with no information. So that's one thing I encourage people to do, is to gather information, documents that, you're entitled to. It's your financial situation. So you should try to get as much of a good picture of that to start with as you can.
And you'd be shocked, Zach, at how many people today, and it doesn't, usually it's the wife who's taking care of the children, doesn't know the assets, but in many cases the guys too have no idea what the family finances are. Like, my personal situation, my wife may not know exactly what's in my account, but she knows what we own, and to a general idea for everything. It's shocking how many come in and they have no idea what the business holdings are, what accounts there are, the value of the home, what's owed in the mortgage, or anything.
What insurance policies there are.
Exactly.
And what I was trying to get at is, like, are you going to fight this out with you two lawyers, or are we going to try and solve this? I mean, because I mean, David, previous shows you said people will fight over the last $10,000 when you're just shooting yourself in the foot, right?
Well, you know, I think Lee and my approach is, here's what you're entitled to. Here's what you've been offered. The difference between what you're entitled to and offered is X dollars. It's going to cost you Y dollars to get to it. Is it worth it?
But sometimes they're just so angry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And that's what you're dealing with.
Well, I've had clients say to me, I'd rather pay you than her. I said, well, you may pay both.
Yes, that's right. Because you don't know how it's going to go.
No, you don't.
And you get into a court situation, and then you're at the mercy of the judge, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are.
That's right.
And you lose control over the decision. At least in a separation agreement, you have some creativity where you can work with the other party, and you know your children or your assets the best. Once you walk into the courtroom, the judge can do basically whatever they want.
And different judges, do you ever walk into court and go, oh, this guy or this woman?
Well, you know, I did know in the past certain ones that I were before was, if I acted for the person wanting spousal support, it was a good draw.
Mm-hmm.
There's others that weren't as good. There's a lot of new judges that have come in that I haven't been before, so you don't know exactly how they're going to play out. But, you know, there's certain ones that if you want to be before them, for sure.
And on the other way, you don't want to be in front.
Exactly. Oh, I think we need to adjourn it. We're going to be 3 hours today or something to that effect, right?
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, there's so much stuff we haven't even touched on, and it's an interesting conversation. And, you know, we joke a little bit about this but sometimes in the darkest times you got to make a joke because it's tough, and you're seeing people at their lowest point, really. I mean, you're breaking up, you know, you're losing a wheel off the car, and you're got kids to deal with and assets, and maybe sometimes not a lot of money.
That's right, and there may not be a lot of cash to pay for everything, and it's tough.
All right. When we continue after the break, we'll pick up the what to do next and how we stick handle our way through this. David Halkett, partner McQuarrie Hunter, joins me along with Leah Donaldson, an associate, when we continue on The Law Show on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.